Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Winning Drive podcast. I'm Reeta Hubbard, the NFL chick, co-host of the Glenn and Rita Show on 105.7 The Fan, with my guy Cordell Woodland from Shaking It Up Sports and the Ravens reporter for 105.7 The Fan. Cordell, the Ravens get one step closer to the Super Bowl as they defeat the Houston Texans in big fashion, 34-10. So much to talk about. Let's start with the offensive side of the ball and the MVP of this league that will be soon announced at some point, but we're going to claim it anyway. Lamar Jackson, he had a game that if you look at the statistics, you would just be like, okay, cool. But again, it's never about the stats. It's always about what it is that you do and what the tape says. So he completed the game. 72% of his passes, well, if you round it off, 73%, only threw 452 yards, but he passed for 2 touchdowns. Then he had 11 carries for 100 yards, and he also had 2 touchdowns, totaling his day for 4 total touchdowns. So, started off slow, and that was something I think that a lot of us were concerned about. One thing that I did notice, Cordell, was instead of the defense for the Texans daring Lamar to pass, which we've heard people say to do in the past, they actually were daring Lamar to throw and taking away the pass. And at first, I think Lamar was hesitant. I think they go in the locker room and, we probably had a powwow, and Todd Monken probably went up to him and was like, hey, you're going to have to run the ball, right? Because they want you to run. Like, they're giving you the lanes. They don't want you to pass. And in the second half, you saw more of him being involved in the run game, and then everything started to open up.
Yeah, I mean, tale of two halves for the offense for sure. First half, sluggish. I think nerves were a part of it.
Sure.
And I think Houston had a good plan
Yep.
intact. They blitzed Lamar a lot in the first half. And I think a problem was that the Ravens, a lot of their routes were running right into the coverage. I think the Ravens were going for the Texans' head to start the game. I honestly think, just from the play calling, it looked like they were going for home run plays. And the Texans, they dropped they're sending the pressure, and everybody else is kind of clouding 15 plus yards down the field, 10, 15 plus yards down the field. And the Ravens didn't have a lot of check down options. There weren't a lot of quick throws in the first half. And so you got what you got. You got Lamar being sacked multiple times. The 2 times to end the first half where that drive was terrible. That was a bad drive. And you saw the offensive line getting overwhelmed. And so, they go into the locker room. Well, Lamar's the first one in the locker room. I noticed that. They have the TVs in the press box as well. And I'm looking on the sideline and I just see Lamar leaving the bench. And I'm like, oh, he is clearly pissed off. Clearly. So he goes in the locker room. Apparently he has a lot to say to the team in the locker room.
Do we have an idea, Cordell, since you were there? Do we have an idea of what was said?
A lot of expletives. And long story short, they needed to get their stuff together. They weren't playing to the level that they have been playing at to that point in the year. They were just not being aggressive. They weren't taking the game to the Texans. And Lamar pretty much challenged them to be a totally different team in the second half. And they were. It gets started with the Duvernay kickoff return. Huge, gets them close to the 50-yard line. Isaiah Likely gets the play to start that drive. He's stiff-arming guys and going an extra 10 yards up the field. It felt different from that very first drive on. And that's really what it turned out to be. They kind of just railroaded them after that to go on to win 34-10. So, look, the run game is still a little bit of a concern for me. It was a concern coming into the game in terms of the running back production. Justice Hill had a good day, 13 carries, 66 yards for him. He continues to be efficient. Gus, 4 yards a carry. I'm still looking for more from Gus. I mean, he
Yeah,
had some tough runs. He definitely
they
had.
got to give him the ball more. I mean, he didn't start the game, so
He did.
you know,
I don't know what it is. I mean, the carries are pretty well spread around. And then, I mean, you got Justice with 13, Lamar with 11, Gus with 10, and Dalvin Cook ends up with 8 himself. So it's tough, to your point, for these guys to really get in a rhythm
Yep,
when it's as evenly spread around as it is. But that's why it's even more imperative for them to make the most of each carry. And
yep.
we'll see what happens as it goes on, because it's only going to get tougher to run the ball. The Chiefs obviously have Chris Jones in the middle, and who the Bills have. So I think that's the one thing that I'm looking at in terms of the run game. Can they get production outside of Lamar in the run game? But yeah, I mean, the passing game was clearly there. I mean, Lamar 4 total touchdowns in the game. He played like the MVP. He really put the team on his shoulders in the second half. And combined with that, with the defense was doing, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But offensively, it was great to see them wake up. Isaiah Likely continues to be a stud. I mean,
Yep.
and I love when they run that play.
I love it. That was a
You
similar
know,
play from the Saints game
yep,
a
yep.
couple years
And they
ago.
ran it earlier this year, I think against Detroit. I want to say, I could be wrong, but they ran it earlier this year. They always have success on that play. And credit to Derek Stingley, who is I think the world of. I think that dude's a stud of a DB. He was on it. I mean, he's there,
Yeah.
which is why Lamar had to throw it behind Isaiah
Yep.
Likely, who ends up
Yep.
making a great play. So all in all, like I said, tale of two halves, but it was great to see them look like themselves in the second half.
My favorite thing is the reception, Cordell, that Dalvin Cook had when he came out. People were clapping, and it's crazy, like, right? Like, he just got there, and we didn't even know if that was going to be a thing in terms of him even being on the active roster when he first came. I think a lot of us thought that he would be an insurance policy, because they had Melvin Gordon. He had been on, all year, and then he gets activated, so apparently he must have done something in practice to make them really like it. And I love the reception. Now, he did only averaged 2.9 yards a carry, but he had that 19-yard run that looked really good. So shout out to him. But I'm with you, man. Like, the second half was definitely one that it felt like they came and woke themselves up. And again, once they realized that Lamar was going to have to use his legs a little bit more, it started opening things up more for what the offense was able to do in the second half. I know he didn't love, I know he loves to he would prefer to throw. I completely understand the logic in that. But sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And my favorite thing is, him running in the tunnel after his touchdown, like Bo Jackson,
Right.
and Ronnie Stanley having to come get him. I mean, at that point, they just having a good time because they feel like that the game is over. It's no coming back. And that defense had done such a great job of containing Houston. So that was definitely exciting to finally see them wake up in the second half. And sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes you got to use a little bit of explicit words to
Yeah.
get people back into the groove of things.
Yeah. I mean, and look, honestly, it continues to show. I've been saying it really all Lamar's career. Any quarterback design run play is like stealing money. It
Mm-hmm.
honestly is. It's a shame that I don't want to say it's a shame, but they waited to the second half to really start leaning on that. I just think, as much as they want to have Lamar be a drop back passer and stuff, you got to go with what works, and both work right now. And I guess that's the challenge of when to lean on that. And then also, you want to give your running backs opportunities. You don't want to keep exposing Lamar to hit. So I get it. It's not like you can just call it every play. But man, if I was Todd Monken, I'd have to stop myself from calling some of those quarterback design runs for him, because they all pop. I mean, they go
Because it was
to
there. It popped because it was there. Because
always
the lanes were there for him. He just Didn't take it. The one thing that you mentioned earlier to Cordell was, and I hope this is something that they learn whoever they play next week. It wasn't a lot of plays, in the flat, wasn't a lot of, those types of plays. So they didn't have those options. What I would hope moving forward is if Lamar is not interested in running, you got to put somebody out there. You got to put Ricard out there or Justice Hill out there, to give them something if Lamar doesn't, if the downfield options are not available. But I'm not going to sit here and nitpick and split hairs here. They definitely went into halftime and adjusted very, very well, and it worked out for them in the long run. My favorite statistic is that the Texans had the sixth best run defense, and to me, that's very shaky. They only gave up 96.6 yards. But I've seen the Texans when their games have been close or the games that they've lost, they've given up a lot of rushing yards. So that's a misconstrued stat, in my opinion. So going into this game, I think that people were concerned about where they're going to be able to run, particularly because Cleveland didn't do it last week. But in my opinion, it's because Cleveland didn't commit to the run, and that's what happened. The Ravens are always going to commit to the run. That's what they're going to do because they are at minimum a balanced team. You might want to say a little bit more run heavy than pass. But ultimately they stuck to what they had over 220 yards, 229 yards on the ground. So good for them for sticking with what it is that they're good at and saying, look, you got to beat us that way.
Yeah, I mean, when Lamar's your quarterback's getting 100 yards on the ground himself, I mean, it's tough to stop. It's tough to stop that. And like I said, I thought Hill had some really good splash runs in there as well. He's been another one of those guys that's been a godsend for them, kind of along the lines of Isaiah Likely. And let's not forget Nelson Aguilar. I almost felt like going into that game he was going to get a touchdown. He just seems to always slip through the cracks.
Every time.
He's honestly probably the best wide receiver they have in the scramble drill, because it still drives me crazy that a lot of these dudes are not coming back to the ball when Lamar breaks out of the pocket. That was a thing that was happening a lot in the first half. But Nelson Aguilar, a lot of his plays this year have been during the scramble drill because he continues to make himself available to his quarterback when he extends the play. I just wish everybody else would kind of follow suit and do that more often. It's just nerve-wracking at times to watch receivers just standing there with their hands in the air or just standing there amazed by Lamar. Some of them, I think, really get caught up. And they've said this before.
Odell said it.
I think they really get caught up watching him and seeing what he's going to do. And one of the plays where Lamar had kind of dove, I think it may have ended up being the one on the drive where he scored late and ended up running through the tunnel. But he a couple plays before he had a run and he tried to kind of dive into the end zone between two people and he was stopped at like the 2-yard line. But he had to tell a couple of his receivers who were right there standing there watching him, like, go upfield, go block somebody. He got on Ronnie Stanley earlier in the game for not going upfield and blocking, and Ronnie ends up tackling him pretty much on that play. And what was so funny was Lamar ends up throwing the touchdown pass to Isaiah Likely. Was that the touchdown to Likely? I can't remember, but I think it was, or he ended up running on the quarterback draw. He ends up scoring a touchdown on that quarterback draw, and he still has something to say to Ronnie Stanley after the fact about that same. I mean, they're still getting into it on the sideline about that previous play. So Lamar's a dude that, he's obviously locked in. He's been telling us all year, but it shows. But his attention to detail right now, going into the half, I said to one of the other media members, this is where that experience from 2019 and all those other years, that's where it's got to kick in now. It's got to kick in now, because at halftime, it was, even in the press box, it was uneasy. It was people going into the, we get the halftime meal and we're all giving each other the look in the line like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, felt very like, oh boy, is this all over again? Which it was different because the Titans kind of came out hot.
Yeah,
Remember, that
yeah.
was different. That was different. But this one was more so like a chess match.
And
But
that was the thing,
uh,
as bad as the Ravens played in the first half, and even at certain points, the good things that the Texans did, it was still a tie game. The Texans
yep,
didn't score an offensive, offensive touchdown the entire game. So
yep.
it just reaffirms the only people that can really stop the Ravens right now are the Ravens. And that's what was happening, I felt like, in the first half.
Yep, and then in the second half, they definitely figured out a way to move the ball and get points as a result. We'll talk about the defense here on Winning Drive. So, of course, you mentioned the defense only giving up 3 points essentially. The 7 points came from a punt return. A very odd day for Jordan Stout, who has played well this
Mhm.
year, but for whatever reason was not really on his A game on Saturday. But look, it all worked itself out. The defense did what they were supposed to do, and you can't ask for any other way. Led by Roquan Smith, who we just continue to see, this I don't think that this is a 20-something-year-old man. I think that this is Ray Lewis reincarnated or something, man. Like he is well and wise beyond his years, and he's so vocal. And he goes out there and the Texans only ended up in the day with 213 total yards, Cordell. They never got inside the Ravens 25, which means they never got into the red zone. Okay, so we saw them beat down the Cleveland Browns, and then the Ravens turn around and do that. And Roquan said, look, we're not the Browns, we're the Ravens. And I'm glad that he said it because, look, the Browns is a good defense, and that's fine. The Browns was also put in a situation where they had to try to play from behind. And usually, sometimes that doesn't work well. The Ravens were never in doubt in terms of playing from behind or any of that stuff. And so they just continue to just be dominant in everything it is that they do.
Yeah, I mean that second half was the definition of dominance.
Yep.
Ravens outgained the Texans 234 to 68 yards.
Crazy.
Second half. Outscored them 24-0 in the second half. Just nothing going right for the Texans,
Yep.
honestly. The defense all across the board was outstanding. I thought the tackling, that they're so good. I mean, Nico Collins, to his credit, got a couple of screen passes earlier. Some of the bubble screens they were able to get to pop. He had that nice one on the deep pass over the middle, where Stroud had all day on that when the Ravens tried to run a stunt game up front, and the Texans O-line did a good job picking it up, and Stroud took his time and made a good throw. But outside of a couple of those plays, he had a nice throw to Devin Singletary early in the game on a third and something, hit Singletary up the sideline. But I mean, the highlights for them were few and far in between. It felt like the defense is just they're aggressive. They come downhill. They're tackling you. You don't have many missed tackles. They tried to flea flicker, screen, or whatever it was, and I mean the Ravens are all over it. Geno Stone blowing that up.
Yeah.
Kyle Hamilton blowing up screens,
Oh, Kyle. Oh, Kyle.
she
The
just
drop interception, Kyle.
the dropped interception was crazy.
Oh,
I think
Kyle.
I think he thought after the first bobble, I think he thought that the ball was I don't think he realized the ball was kind of still there for him to pick it off because he almost looked surprised on the very last part of that play where he ends up dropping. He almost looked surprised that the ball is still right there. But hey, I mean, credit to the defense, all in all, like you mentioned, led by Roquan, who led the team in tackles, 2 tackles for loss.
Yep.
He just is exactly what this defense needs.
Yep.
He's the perfect motivator. He's the perfect leader because he leads by example. He plays so fast and physical. You have to try to keep up with him because if not, it's going to pop out. It's going to show that you're kind of the anchor. You're kind of holding those guys back because everybody else follows suit with what Roquan is doing. So credit to him, credit to that secondary, really good job limiting that explosive offense who had been good, coming into this game. And they, the defense really didn't give them anything. I mean,
Nothing.
it's not much to say about this defense, to be honest with you. They shut down the run, they took away the pass, they got after CJ Stroud. And what was the best thing about it? They didn't have any turnovers, they didn't have any sacks, and
Yep.
they still were dominant. To not
Yep.
get any type of explosive game-changing plays and still dominate. I mean, you talk about modern day football and how this game is centered around the offenses in this league, and to be able to be a triple crown winner in
Yep.
this era is
Yep.
insane. It's
Yep.
truly insane. I mean, I don't think that's been talked about enough. I really don't. I don't think that's been talked about enough. This defense has been a unicorn this year. You
Yeah.
just don't see defenses like this in this era. And I mean, you look at this Ravens team, and when they really start playing complementary football, which is what they did in the second half,
Yep.
I just don't see how anybody can beat them.
I
I
agree. The only team that can beat them is them. Literally, the only team that can beat the Ravens are the Ravens when they have slow starts and stuff, and you allow kind of defense or other opposing teams to kind of do their thing. You have the ability, and that's something that we've seen all year. And we've talked about this, that the losses that they had were a lot of to do with them and not the opponent. So good for them for finding a way to get around their first half jitters in that regard. I just don't. There's so many great things that you could say, and you mentioned how the defense is like a unicorn, but to me they have unicorns on different levels. Like Kyle Hamilton is a unicorn in
Yeah.
terms of how big he is, how big he is, his wingspan, and how smart he is in terms of how he's apparently he's a guy that watches film like religiously, like all the time, kind of obsessive with it.
Uh-huh.
So he loves studying his opponents in and out. And you got Roquan Smith, who is like the second coming of Ray Lewis. You know what I'm saying? They're guys that just really feel like that they're not replaceable on this roster. So that definitely helps into what it is that they need to do to slow down a Texans the offense that had just been riding high for weeks now. Says a lot about what this defense is able to do to essentially anybody, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and it was kind of the tale of two halves a little bit for the Texans offense.
Yep.
The first half they were able to make some things happen. And I think in the second half, Mike McDonald made an adjustment himself to start blitzing more, especially on
Yeah.
third downs. On third
Yep.
down, I thought he started to bring the heat. They sped the game up on CJ Stroud. And in the first half, he seemed comfortable. He
Yep.
seemed in rhythm. He seemed confident. That all went out the window in the second half. He seemed indecisive. He seemed anxious. He seemed rushed. So look again. I think this defense is dominant. They're one of the
Yep.
more dominant defenses we've seen in a while because there really aren't no flaws. And remember, they played this game without Marlon Humphrey. You wouldn't be able to tell. That I continue to double and triple and quadruple down on Brandon Stevens and what he has been to this team all year. He had a good day. Ronald Darby, who was tested quite a bit in this game, I thought Ronald Darby had a really good day as well. So all in all, great game. All up front, those guys balled out. Clowney was all over the place. Van Noy making huge stops. I thought Travis Jones played strong. I was really impressed. I mean, and
Clowney
Patrick
and Van Noy,
all
man.
over the place.
Clowney and Van Noy. Golly, man. These
Yeah.
are two guys that I want to give them all the flowers while they're here. Because I don't know what happens when they leave here. I don't know how this goes. But these are two veterans that I think, at least for Clowney, because of the way that he left Cleveland, you just didn't really know how that was going to, go. And, when eventually he would, decide that he didn't want to necessarily play at a high level anymore. And, Van Noy being on the street essentially in the beginning of the season, I don't understand why. I don't know why anybody didn't pick him up because he's been a phenomenal factor into what it is that they've been doing. You just got to kudos to Eric DaCosta, man. Like those two guys have been such a great part of what this defense has been able to do, and they also bring in veteran leadership into that conversation as well, particularly Van Noy, who's won a Super Bowl already. So that's just, those were two hirings that have just overachieved itself, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, and it just continues to show us that Mike McDonald in this system is, almost, I'm almost starting to feel like anybody could jump up. I could go out there and get 5 interceptions, to be honest with you. I mean, I think he'd find the best way to utilize me and put me in the positions to succeed. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. I mean, he's just been that good. He's been that
Right.
good. And I talked
Right.
about that matchup between him and Bobby Slowick coming into this game, and winner goes to Mike McDonald. You know, he yet again aces a test, completely confuses another offensive coordinator, and I just think he continues to add to his impressive resume.
I completely agree with you. And so it's just been fun to watch, man. This defense has been lights out all year. I love the fact that Mike McDonald has actually heard about the smear campaign against him over on the internet.
Right. Yeah.
Apparently, he knows that people have been like sending tweets to teams saying that, Mike McDonald kicks puppies or, whatever. Marlon Humphrey's sister said that he called their mama a boy, scallywag, and, it's
He
hilarious.
acknowledged that some of them were good. You know, he said
Yeah.
most of them were bad, but he thought some of them made him laugh.
Look, and it's not malicious intent, because some of them probably did go too far. You know what I mean? But God, look, that just means that people want you to stay here, bro, and they willing to say whatever it is, not too far, to keep you here. So that is just
to say, I really would not be surprised if both coordinators are back in
I
Baltimore.
would not either.
You're looking at these high-profile jobs, and you're starting to see who they're honing in on.
Yep.
They're not leaving for the Panthers. You know what I'm saying? There's got to be something worth the while. So I really wouldn't be shocked if they're both back.
I completely agree with you there. All right, let's talk pats on the hat here on Winning Drive. All right, it's pats on the hat time, Cordell. There's a lot to give out, but we typically narrow it down to 3. So I'll let you start.
You go ahead, ladies first.
All right.
It to last like 3 times, and I don't want to take the leader anymore.
All right, cool. Because I'm gonna take him. I'm gonna take Lamar Jackson. Obviously, you got to give it to him. 112 passer rating. 100 yards rushing, 4 total touchdowns. Nobody ever has done that. Regular season, postseason, doesn't matter. Lamar Jackson continues to show the league that not only is he a special talent, but he is one of one, and he is the MVP of this league, regardless of what anybody else tries to tell you. And so we're going to continue to give Lamar Jackson his flowers because he very well so deserves it. So Lamar gets my first pat on the hat.
I'm going on the defensive side. I'm gonna go with Roquan. Roquan, just like Lamar, he led his unit.
Yep.
He's the captain in battle, and I mean he's an easy person to follow behind, because he leads by example, and he can talk the talk. He rushes the talk. He is not afraid to speak his mind, and equally as so, he is as anxious to go out there and back it up. And I do love this kind of tutelage that he has given to Patrick Queen, because Queen kind of follows that mantra. I mean, Queen, I don't think tries to give the quotes that Roquan does, but Queen will give you good quotes as well. If you watch the games, Queen's the talker. Queen's the one that always has to. He and Devin Singletary had to be separated a bunch of times in that game. Queen had a lot to say to him, to Dalton Schultz. That's just what he does, and he's a warrior as well. But I think a lot of it is due to what Roquan Smith has brought. I think his personality, his in-game personality, because who he is in-game and who he is off the field are 2 totally different people.
Yeah, very nice guy off the field.
Very nice guy. It's crazy. You don't really see play with that type of intensity. And then off the field, they're kind of that, soft spoken, kind of gentle type of
Yeah,
dude. But that's who he is. But yeah, on game day, he is a total monster. And as we say with Lamar, as he goes, this team will go. I think that's the same with Roquan and this defense. As Roquan goes, as he continues to set the tone, this defense will continue to follow suit.
I completely agree with you. Like you said, he's the gentle giant when he's off. But then he's like this dude that is just ridiculously, a different guy. There's football Roquan and then there's personal Roquan.
Yeah.
And you can't tell me any different. There's two different people. I'm going to go with Nelson Aguilar. I know he didn't do much, right? He's targeted 4 times. He had 2 receptions for 12 yards and a touchdown. But someone asked before the game, earlier in the week, who did they think that the Ravens were the X factor would be in order for them to continue to go? And I said Nelson Aguilar. And my answer is because not even just him scoring touchdowns. He's literally probably the 4th wide receiver on the depth chart, right? But you mentioned this earlier, like what Nelson Aguilar is able to do. Like he comes back to the ball, he continues to run and try to get himself open. He knows how to roll coverages his way. He's a very smart football player. And I know that the statistics don't tell you how important that he is to this team, but he is an important part of this team. And he showed that in Saturday's game. And so I just think that he's a lot of times the unsung hero, and I'm going to give him the respect that absolutely has earned and deserves. So while the statistics don't tell you much about what Aguilar is doing, he is doing out there. So I'm giving him his flowers. I'm gonna give him a pat on the hat.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on the offensive side as well. I'm gonna go with Isaiah Likely, who gets a touchdown, 2 catches, 34 yards. Not a great statistical day for him, but I just love this kid's growth. I love Lamar's trust in him. He's become so good in the red zone. His hands, for as much as he struggled to catch the ball earlier in the season when Mark was there, it's kind of gone away. He's caught everything. It feels like that's thrown to him, and the catch he makes in that game for the touchdown, I mean, it's behind him. He's got to kind of contort his body in the air. He catches it with his hands, strong hands, snatches it out the air. That's a sign of a confident player right there. So I'm big on what Isaiah Likely has done for this offense. I said it earlier in the season when we did our overall season pass on the hat, that I think he is kind of the guy that stabilized this offense once Mark Andrews went down. He not only kept the ball rolling, but he opened up a new layer for this offense. That's really when the off script stuff really started to become a thing for them, and he has done a good job of making himself available, finding vacated areas, just being a good tight end one. He has been for them. So Isaiah Likely, he continues to mature. He's only going to get better. This is only year 2 for Isaiah Likely. So
Only
you got
year
some time
2.
to really watch this dude.
Yeah, and it's been fun from the Colts game where he got, a lot of people weren't too thrilled about, the drop passes to where he's been now has just been remarkable. And we gotta give him his flowers. So I think my last one is gonna be to Patrick Queen. It's very hard because it's like, again, they didn't have any sacks, they didn't have any turnovers, but yet they were so dominant, right? And I could give it to anybody. I really could. But I'll give it to Patrick Queen because he also had 5 tackles as well. And I just love that duo of Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith. And I don't know what happens in the offseason, but I really hope that those 2 guys together can find a way to muster up a championship this year because they deserve it. And you don't know how long that's going to last, after the postseason is over, when the season is finally over. Because Patrick Queen, in my opinion, is going to get a good contract somewhere else. And I'm not trying to be melancholy about it, but I guess I'm saying, like, you got to savor these moments in terms of how well they complement each other, how good they play together. And I thought that he also had a good night as well. So I mean, we know that defense overall. I wish I could just give the pat on the hat to the whole defense because
Mhm.
I feel like they deserve it. Not giving up a touchdown is huge, huge. Okay, especially in the playoffs. That's
Right.
huge. So I mean, they all deserve it. But if I had to give a specific pat on the hat, I'll give Queen my third pat on the hat.
And to your point, I mean, I asked John Harbaugh after the game about the defense's performance. He said the defense was as good as it could be. I mean, and honestly, that's about the best way you could put it. I mean, I don't think they could have been any better than they were. Sure, they could have gotten that interception from Kyle Hamilton or gotten a couple of sacks, but all in all, it's the same result. You're not giving anything up. All their drives are stalling out. I thought the defense was just outstanding. I'm gonna give my last one to a defensive guy as well. I'm gonna go with Justin Matabike, the kind of the
Yeah.
unsung hero of that
Mm-hmm.
game. Justin Matabike, team high 4 pressures. He was killing Shaq Mason all game. Three of his 4 pressures came against Shaq Mason, and they were only matched up 11 times in the game. According
Mm-hmm.
to Next Gen Stats, Matabike also had 2 quarterback hits in the game as well. Of course, didn't get the sack like we mentioned, but Matabike setting that tone, making CJ Stroud uncomfortable, forcing them to get off his spot, still hitting them at times. Matabike continues to be that man in the middle, and you mentioned Queen for your last one, and I mentioned Matabike, 2 guys who are in the last year of their deal. One of them, at least, I would imagine, will be around next year, at least, with the franchise tag. But that's part of the reason why you're like, you got to do it now. You got to go get it now because this team is not going to look the same next year. The money will be tighter. You'll have key young guys who are in contract years that'll probably go on elsewhere. So while you have this team right now, you got to take advantage of it. And I continue to say it, they do have the best team in football.
Yeah, they're so well rounded on both sides of the ball. And number one in scoring defense, number two scoring offense. I mean, perfect match in terms of what it is that they both want to do. And so I'm giving an honorable mention to John Harbaugh. He got a little bit of moves. I seen your moves in the locker room, coach.
Yeah.
He was in there jamming a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So shout out to you for getting in the circle and doing whatever it is that you was doing. You was having a good old time, and I was enjoying watching it as well. Also, honorable mention to Cordell is I'd like to say the fans, because I thought there was a lot of discourse about people, because people were selling tickets. First of all, let's be clear. SeatGeek is a resale site. Okay. So the tickets were bought. Let's start with the fact that the tickets were bought. These were not actual tickets, these were resale tickets. Okay. So there was a lot of discourse about people about so many tickets being for sale. And look, obviously the cold weather, it was 20 degrees outside, played a huge role into why the prices dropped. And that's understandable. By the way, the prices for the Chiefs game was like $30. So I don't know why we're doing this. People don't like to sit outside in cold weather. It's fine. However, the bank was full. Let's start there. The bank was rocking. And so essentially it had no effect on what it is that they did. They had against the Texans offense 5 false starts, 1 delay a game. To me, it feels so y'all complained of all that time, and all the people showed up, and they were loud. Maybe you should just let things play out and see how it goes. So,
and Roquan made a good point. Roquan made a good point about that, what the fans did in the game, because he said it helps out the pass rushers because then the snap count becomes more predictable now because they got to make sure they're all on the same pace. So it now allows the pass rushers to kind of pick up on the cadence a little bit. So yeah, the fans were huge. I mean, it felt like there was at least 1 false start on each drive to start that game. The Texans were moving backwards. So yeah, the fans were definitely loud out there, and it's going to have to be even louder next week, obviously.
So we want to thank you all for listening. We'll talk this week about the matchup that the Ravens will be facing, and some things that we can see in terms of what's going to help them advance to their first championship with Lamar Jackson at the helm. So enjoy. Ravens get there first. AFC Championship game in over 50 years next Sunday at 3 p.m. And we are excited about it. And be excited this week, guys, because you definitely earned it, especially if you were there. We want to thank you all for listening. Until next time. So from Cordell to me, this is Winning Drive.